We're staging a billion-dollar heist at the Haunted Mansion and facing Lemoncita of Gran Turismo. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Groovy.
Hello and welcome back to the show. We have got a fun-packed show today with new movies, including Penelope Cruz, Orlando Bloom, Owen Wilson. It just gets better and better. So we're going to start with, I think I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Van, Lemoncita.
I mean, I love that you think it relates to citrus. I mean, we had this conversation before we came on mic. You're like, does it have anything to do with lemons? I'm like, no, sadly, nothing to do with no. I think we just discovered, didn't we, that it translates to the intensity.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
What Lemoncita translates. It's the intensity. And this is a new drama starring Penelope Cruz, as you point out. This is from writer-director Emmanuel Crialas. Crialase, I think his name is, who directed Terra Firma in, I think it was 2011. And this takes place, this is set in Rome. So this is a Spanish family that have moved to Rome. And I think it's set in the late 70s, early 80s. And you've got Penelope Cruz, who, she's not a single mum, but for all intents and purposes, she may as well be. You know what I mean? She's a mum whose husband is like a serial cheater. And he's always off, like, making thinly veiled excuses. He's very obviously having it off with, I think, his assistant. And like, the excuses are getting flimsier and flimsier. And she very clearly knows. And meanwhile, they have 3 children together. And the eldest, who's their daughter, has what I'm reasonably sure wasn't a thing at the time. Like, wouldn't have been quite as pronounced at the time or as defined at the time. But gender identity issues. And what we would have said back in the day, we would have said was a tomboy. Dresses in very male clothing. Like we would obviously be a lot more academic about it today. But
Yeah.
She's a tomboy is what they say, and she's kind of ostracized by her dad from for that element. But meanwhile, you have the mum who bonds more closely with their children than she does their adult friends. That they have dinner parties, for instance, and things, and she's more likely to be found running around on her hands and knees under the dinner table, palling around with the kids and playing make-believe than she is like playing with the adults. She feels detached from all of this, and it is just this effectively familial love story between mother and children, and the story of the development of how the development and deterioration of this family. It stretches across a number of years as well. This is one that is gonna. I did actually check the Guardian review of this, and I think it only got 3 stars in the Guardian, which genuinely shocked me because it seems like a Cardigan's wet dream. If you know what I mean, it's just one of those. Yeah, you know the kind of on about, like, it's got Penelope Cruz in full foreign language mode, but without Pedro Almodovar. And normally, if you've ever seen Penelope Cruz in a foreign language film, usually it's in the guise of an Almodovar movie, or usually it's opposite, like Antonio Banderas, for instance. So there's a certain aesthetic we're used to, and this isn't quite as imaginative or quite as pronounced as an Almodovar movie. This is a lot more kitchen sink. This is a lot more down and dirty. This is a lot more, we're into the familial love of all of this. But at the same part, it's equal parts about the kids as it is about the mum in this case. And the eldest daughter, for instance, who I'm going to have to look up, actually, is Luana Giuliani. Enters into a friendship / burgeoning relationship with, for instance, a girl from the quote-unquote wrong side of the tracks, and is told off for this. And this is their sort of like their arc, for instance, is don't go near this kid. But really, it's not really one for plot. I mean, it's quite well directed. It's quite well realized. You do very much get a sense of it. Do you ever see something like The Ice Storm? You ever see The Ice Storm in the late 90s with Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver and
it rings a bell.
Elijah Wood and Christina Ricci, but back when they were both kids. It's about 98, 99, The Ice Storm. I think 1997 maybe. But it's that kind of a film. But instead of the American suburbs, for instance, which I think is where you'd go with this if you were doing the English language version, you get, metropolitan Rome. You get the cityscape of Rome. We were talking last week about Paris Memories, for instance, and how it used the urbanite environment of, contemporary Paris. This uses 70s Rome in much of the same way of, this is our stand-in for we don't need the suburbs. Our, capital city kind of works the same way here, and you very much get that feeling through it. It didn't. I mean, at the same time, I was grabbed by the emotion of it, but I did feel kind of detached from it. I kind of wished that it was going somewhere heftier. But at the same time, I will admit, and I know that this is individual to me, the relationship between the mother and children, for instance, I thought was so well developed and so well defined that, based on experiences in my own experience, my own past, I actually found it kind of triggering at times. Penelope Cruz is absolutely brilliant in this, but then again, she's Penelope Cruz. When is she not? Penelope Cruz is not someone who's ever phoned it in. Like, even on her worst day, even whatever that was, it Pirates of the Caribbean, Salazar's Revenge, or I forget which Pirates of the Caribbean she was in. When she was Blackbeard's daughter. Do you remember the one?
Oh, yeah, I think that's the second one.
No, it's definitely not the second. It's like the fourth or fifth or sixth.
Oh, was it that far through? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, she's like Ian McShane's daughter, isn't she? Ian McShane is Blackbeard, and she's his daughter. Or is she Jeffrey Rush's? She's someone's daughter in Pirates of the Caribbean. And even in that, the most phoned in, job she could ever have, she still brings it because she's Penelope Cruz. Like, she comes with, a thespian heft. And you very much get that here. But I find that the material is not quite there on a substantial enough level to really offer much outside of the performance and the emotion. I don't think there's enough story to this. And I think that's where it goes wrong, because I'm watching Penelope Cruz in a foreign language film. I'm in a Moldovar mode. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in a Moldovar mode. I can't remember the last one that he did with her that I thought was really brilliant. But this isn't quite there for me. I'm going to say, Luana Giuliani, I think it's Giuliani, great as Adri, or I think it's Adri it goes by. Also very good, the eldest daughter. But there's something missing from it. I got emotion, I was moved by it, but I just felt there was something missing from it. So if you're a Cruise in subtitled mode aficionado, then obviously you're going to want to check this out anyway. But if you're going into this expecting Cruise in a Moldovar mode, you are not getting it. You're getting this. This is not dialed up to 11. This is dialed up to about a 6. You know what I mean?
What did setting this in Rome add to the story as such? Why couldn't this have been set in Paris or London?
I mean, it needs to be set anywhere other than where Penelope Cruz and her family are originally from, because you need that distance and that alienation for the arc of why the mother and children have bonded so intensely to work.
Right.
The isolation of, from the husband, for instance. Like, again, I drew on childhood memories with this one, genuinely. Like, I found this was a really triggering movie for me, but it still didn't get me there in terms of the 5-star ranking kind of a thing. But you needed that. You need that geographical isolation, I think, for this story to work. It doesn't quite work, but it almost does. You know what I mean?
So you're not going to see some amazing, beautiful sights of Rome in this, just as we discussed with the other film last week. It's more, like you say, set in the nitty-gritty parts of Rome.
There is quite a nice sequence, actually, in which Cruz and her children sort of bond by just running through the streets screaming, like this is their childhood. And when you're a kid, you just want to run through the neighborhood yelling. It does have that kind of sequence for Cruz and her kids, and it's a wonderful moment. It does show off, like there's a nice side of Rome that you get to that. But again, like you say, it could have been any city as long as it wasn't the city they were from. So, it could just as easily have been London. It could just as easily have been Lisbon. It could have been Berlin. You know what I mean? It just obviously can't be anywhere that isn't Spanish.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, if you want to make your own mind up and see it yourself, it is in cinemas from today. Right, we're going to be talking about Gran Turismo, which of course stars Orlando Bloom in just a moment. We'll see what Van thought of that one in just a minute. Stay where you are. Hello and welcome back. Right, let's crack straight on with another brand new movie out this week, which is in cinemas from today. Gran Turismo, starring, if I can say it properly, Gran Turismo, starring Orlando Bloom. Well, let's see what Van thought of this one. Over to you.
I mean, first of all, you'd be shocked how many people think this is a remake of Gran Torino or a sequel to Gran Torino with Clint Eastwood. Which, I'll be honest, if there's going to be a sequel to a Clint Eastwood movie, Gran Torino's a bloody good one to do. I'm not going to lie. I'd pay money to see that. So, brace yourself for this. Okay, so this is the latest film from director Neil Blomkamp, who, famously brought us District 9 and Elysium and Chappie, and almost brought us Alien 5 and RoboCop Returns, and a bunch of other movies that never happened because he's kind of like Guillermo del Toro. He announces projects and then they disappear, or they just fall through. So for some reason that makes absolutely no sense in the universe, rather like Ben Wheatley directing a sequel to The Meg, he has decided to direct the feature film adaptation, well, not of the game, but of a true story related to the video game, Gran Turismo. So, Gran Turismo, as you well know, is a PlayStation driving simulator, right?
Yeah.
Right. This is not like Burnout, which is my go-to PlayStation driving simulator, which is just a fun racing game. This is a proper academic level driving simulator. This is Formula One simulator, so it's quite dull in actuality. Now, we begin this movie with an actual explanation of this game. Like, we're told this. We're told about the development of Gran Turismo as if it's the lore that sets up the plot to the movie Dune. As if this is Frank Herbert. As in 19 blah, 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 so-and-so, the software developer decided to come up with the ultimate driving simulator, and he did this, and he 3D scanned that, and he measured this, and we're shown a montage of them 3D scanning cars, and all of this nonsense. For what feels like an unfathomably long time before we're introduced to our main character, who is a real person. Like, this actually is based on a true story, okay? This is a fictionalized version of Jan Mardenborough, I think his name is, who's played for the screen by Archie Madakave? I think it's Madakave. Right. And I'm not sure of which bits of this are entirely true. I'm just going to go with the version that's in the film. Who is the son of an immigrant to Wales, who's played in the film by Jaimin Hunsu, who came to Wales to play professional football for Cardiff. I think he had an injury and was cut from the team. And he's now raised two sons with his wife, played in the film by Jerry Halliwell. Because it's that kind of, that reaction right there. Yeah, that says it all.
Wow.
Who has a weird thing about lentils. We'll get to that. And he's got one son who wants to follow in his footsteps and play football. And he's got another son, Jan, our main character, who really wants to be a Formula One driver. And he thinks that in order to do this, he can play Gran Turismo on his PlayStation with his ludicrously overpriced home driving rig. Now, I have friends who have Twitch channels, so I know this is a real thing where they've got, like, sheds in their garden where they've got full driving rigs set up with steering wheels and pedals and all that, and proper, self-branded t-shirts. I know this is a real thing. Shout out to my boy Gareth. I know this is a real thing. So fair play. I'm not calling nonsense on that. I'm not calling BS on that. So, enter into this equation Orlando Bloom, who plays, I think he's Danny, who's the head of marketing for Nissan. And he has an idea. He's going to make Nissan the new kid on the Formula One block. He's going to bolster their image by finding the best Gran Turismo drivers in the world and training them to become Formula One drivers. And he recruits a sort of down on his luck, think Emilio in Mighty Ducks style coach, played by David Harbour, who apparently really needed a paycheck to coach these kids. And David Harbour, who starts off with this is not going to work, this is nonsense, nonsense sort of, smack talker. Within about 10 minutes, turns his opinion around. He becomes the guy in Jan's corner. Jan is obviously the plucky recruit. His dad doesn't believe in him. He gets the golden ticket, literally the Wonka-style golden ticket, which just drops into his lap to go and become a Formula One driver. And if you think this sounds like absolute garbage, spoiler alert, it is. And even if I didn't tell you that, you'd very quickly work it out from this clip.
Listen, son. You think you're gonna play a stupid video game about cars and you're gonna become a race car driver?
All I ever wanted to do is be a racer. I'm doing it.
The 10 of you are the best.
Gran Turismo players in the world. Now is your chance to race real cars.
This is insane. It's not gonna work. The guys who race are elite athletes. Your kids are scrawny little gamer kids.
That's where you come in.
You think you can do the impossible. I'm here to prove that you can't.
You get tired, you get sloppy, you get hurt, and you lose races! You puked on my lawn.
I won't lie, I'm a little bit disappointed from that clip and from what you said, because I was hoping this was going to be a really good, action-packed, fun movie with a decent story, but it doesn't sound like it is. I mean, I've got to ask, what part of this is the true story part?
No, the whole thing is the true story. That's the most insane part. You get to the end of this insanely overlong, and I do mean overlong. This thing is 2.25 hours long. You get to the end of this 2.25 hour long film, and the caption comes up on screen and tells you about the true story. And that's when it's pointed out to you that the real Jan Mardenborough actually is the stunt double in the movie for the kid playing Jan Mardenborough. And you're like, I feel like that's more thought than anyone put into anything else about this movie, because goddamn, oh my god. Right, like I say, it's between this and Meg 2 with Ben Wheatley as to what is the more baffling choice for any director to pick up a movie. Incidentally, can I just go back a second to something you just said about you expected more from the story? You were expecting more from the story for a movie based on Gran Turismo, the PlayStation game. I just want to circle back to that point, because when you say it out loud in the cold light of day, it sounds bonkers, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I in my head, it was kind of a Fast and Furious kind of story. That's what I expected without seeing anything, without seeing a trailer.
A friend of mine was telling me, apparently, I think it's Namco, are actually setting that up at Universal with Ridge Racer. They actually want Ridge Racer to be the actual successor to Fast and Furious. And you know what? Why not? Because if you can get away with peddling this drivel, which basically plays as the last starfighter for the terminally brain damaged, then hot damn. I mean, this makes Need for Speed look like Top Gun. In fact, it makes Need for Speed look like Top Gun Maverick, if I'm being really honest. This is absolute garbage. About the point that Jerry Halliwell shows up to start talking about lentils, you honestly start thinking, do you know what? Come back, 1993 Super Mario Brothers. All is forgiven. Good Lord, this is garbage. Absolute garbage. Archie Matacave's performance is so unfathomably crap that I almost feel the need to look up whoever it was that starred in the movie Goal back in 2005 and apologise to that guy, because I thought he was... Because that's the movie I kept thinking about during this, was Goal. Do you remember Goal?
Never ever saw it. I'm guessing it wasn't great.
It was a trilogy of movies that was set and filmed during actual Premier League and World Cup football matches. They actually used real players and they set an actual narrative during it. And the idea was great in theory, but the movie was garbage and you had a garbage lead. And yeah, that's what I thought of a lot during this. Whatever they are paying Jaimin Hunsu and David Harbour for this, I promise they were worth more, because they are single-handed, between the pair of them, they are carrying this thing aloft. And believe me, it has the weight of an actual Formula One car between them. Imagine the two of them actually lifting a Formula One car above their shoulders, between the two of them, carrying it like a casket. And that is close. That's the closest visual metaphor I could conjure for you for the absolute garbage dumpster fire that is this steaming pile of crap. The fact that the director of District 9 is attached to this is frankly unfathomable. I was bored. I mean, I literally smacked my own self in the face. How distracted I was. Oh my God. And there were people just panderingly clapping away at the end of this, because this is where we've gotten to with the stage of screenings now. It's half critics, half garbage influencers. And they're clapping away because I think they're just happy to be invited to a movie, and they think they're letting the side down if they're not seen to be enthusiastic, because that's their job, it seems. And good Lord, you have never felt yourself slipping into a waking coma faster than you have during this movie. And it's about as fast as an actual Formula One race, which, believe me, does not compare to the actual pacing and runtime of, again, this absolute crapshoot of a movie. Do not see this movie. Do not see Gran Turismo. If you're the kind of... In fact, you know what? I'll take that back. If you're the kind of person dumb enough, you're the kind of person of so little substance that you actually would get excited about the idea of an entire 2.25 hour length feature film based on Gran Turismo, the PlayStation game, a movie that, and I can't stress this highly enough, at one point stops dead so that they can actually get the creator of Gran Turismo in there. I didn't even look up whether or not it's the actual guy or if it's someone playing him, to literally shake his hand and tell him what an inspirational figure he is. If you're the kind of person gullible, shallow, and stupid enough to actually pander for that garbage, this is the movie for you. If you have half a brain cell, maybe 5 IQ points to spare, avoid this like the plague. No. Go and see Oppenheimer instead. Go and see Barbie. Go and see Dead Reckoning. Do not, for the love of God, press start on Gran Turismo.
Well, I'm guessing as well, I'm guessing the end that he didn't find a racing driver because as far as I'm aware, there isn't a Nissan team in Formula One.
Actually, I mean, you might want to check your history on that one.
Oh, no.
Check your history. No.
Well, I don't watch Formula One much, just to guess.
I will say though, I was talking to a couple of my critic friends afterwards, and I was sort of thinking, do you know what? This is the kind. If I hadn't looked up the true story at that point, and I said to them, do you know what? This is the kind of nonsense stunt you could only get away with if you were Nissan, because at that stage nobody gives a toss what it is you're doing anyway, because you're already Nissan. So fair play.
Well, if you want to make your own mind up, Hugh Van.
Yeah, don't bother. Honestly, don't.
It is in cinemas from today. Gran Turismo. Make your own mind up if you wish. Right, moving on. We are heading over to Owen Wilson. Haunted Mansion. That was a really bad impression, I know, but we'll see what Van thought of that next. So, welcome back to the show then. We are going to look at Billion Dollar Heist in a moment, and then we'll look at some of the new movies that are out next week. But right now, we are heading over to Owen Wilson in Haunted Mansion. I've got to say, after reading the synopsis to this, there didn't seem to be any huge surprises. It just seemed like your basic ghost story to me. Single mum, hired a tour guide, a psychic, a priest, historian. It's ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did you see the last version of the Haunted Mansion back in, I think it was 2003, 2004, I want to say?
No, definitely didn't.
Okay. So back in the early 2000s, after 2003, because in 2003, Disney released Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, right?
Yeah.
And the idea was there that Disney had, for the first time, adapted one of their theme park rides, one of the Disneyland rides, and gotten a mega hit blockbuster out. So, the decision was made to try and do this with more of the Disney theme park rides. And the first one was the Haunted Mansion. So this is literally another one based on a Disney ride. Now, the last version starred Eddie Murphy. I forget who else was in it. It was a long time ago, I can say. It was crap. It was absolute rubbish. I don't think it made much money. It was kind of a financial disappointment. No one really seems to remember it now. But the property kind of lingered there, and there was potential in it. So there was always the idea of going back to it. And in the interim, I think there's Tomorrowland as well, which they attempted to adapt into a movie. And again, no one really showed up for that, although Tomorrowland is an infinitely better movie than either version of The Haunted Mansion, and indeed most of the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels. So, enter director Justin Simien, who showed up for our screening of this, it's worth pointing out, and rudely cut in front of me in line at one point, and I didn't know who he was, and I remember thinking, who's this? Insert expletive here. And then he showed up to intro the movie, and I'm like, oh, it's him. Yeah, so I didn't have a high opinion of him going into the movie. Justin Simien wrote and directed the movie Dear Black People with Tessa Thompson, I think about 5-6 years ago now. Turned into a successful enough TV series. Has now done this latest version of The Haunted Mansion, in which, it's worth pointing out, Owen Wilson is not the lead. He's the biggest known star,
Wow.
in the cast. Wow, indeed.
Wow.
What did you just say? It's 30 grand. Is it 30 grand a time that Owen Wilson? Someone did the math.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson's been paid 30 grand a time for every time that he said the word wow. If you do the math, it works out $30,000 for every time he has said wow in his career. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's wow in itself. Jeez, that's wow. Really. Right, so the actual lead is Lakeith Stanfield from Get Out and Sorry to Bother You. And so we're introduced to him at the start of this movie. He is I think he's an astrophysicist or a quantum physicist who falls in love with a sort of a supernatural tour guide in New Orleans. Flash forward a few years, and she has passed away. She's died in an accident, and I think it's a drunk driver type accident. And he has taken over her role for us. The astrophysicist is now a jaded alcoholic, and he's taken over her tour guide gig for her. And he is approached one day, wait for it, by Owen Wilson. Aha! There you go. You can wow that one.
Wow.
There you go. I'm sorry. I can spare you 30p if you like.
That'll do.
30p. I'll give you 30p a wow. Don't take the mic. Don't take the mic with it. I'll give you 30p a wow. You got 30 grand, you can have 30p a wow. He's approached by Owen Wilson, who's a priest, who has a gig for him. And as you say, single mum, Rosario Dawson, she and her son have moved into this mansion that they found on Zillow. I'll get to that. This mansion they found on Zillow because it was all they could afford. You know, a mansion. Because all they could afford in New Orleans was a mansion.
That's
nothing
weird.
Nothing about this seems odd. Okay, so they move into the mansion, and every night at midnight, ghosts pop out, and they hire, they get the priest and Lakeith Stanfield to come, and they want to do an exorcism and exorcise, and a team is assembled. You've got Psychic, played by I'm gonna have to look at the cast. What's her name? Tiffany Haddish, because this movie was apparently greenlit like 7 or 8 years ago, and Tiffany Haddish was cool for 5 minutes, and people still thought she was funny, and Danny DeVito, whose job role I kind of forget. And they set about doing the exorcism on the haunted mansion, during which they discover that the mansion is actually being attacked by a dead cult leader played by Jared Leto, because that's the level of subtlety we're going for. And believe me, I'm going to get to all this. But before that, have a clip.
I've done it 1,000 times.
You see, you say it like that. Makes me feel like you've never done it.
Yes, I have. I've probably done it like 10,000 times.
Why elevate it to that level? Then I don't believe it at all. How am I going to get into this?
Believe it, boo. Believe it. Now, if I'm gone for more than 10 minutes, ring this bell. If I get lost, it'll help me find my way back. See, I have to be very raw in order to go into the other side. This is a picture of my dog that tragically moved to live on a farm. Actually, got hit by a car. Bursted like a water balloon.
Sis. Wait, what? What?
I mean, just listening to you talking about it and reading the synopsis, it does sound to me like it's a comedy and nothing but.
Now, if it could settle and decide to be a comedy, that actually would be progress. Because, right, on a production level, this thing kind of looks and feels a bit like the 1995 Casper movie. You remember the Casper movie with Bill Pullman and Christina Ricci?
Yeah, I loved that.
Who doesn't? Great movie, right? Still an all-timer. Now, Casper, way better movie than this. This is appallingly bad. This is not Gran Turismo bad, but it's close. Okay? It's close to Gran Turismo bad. Tonally, it's absolutely all over the place. On a plot level, it's predictable as toffee. Casting Jared Leto as a cult leader in any movie in 2023 is... Ooh, that's about on par as that time they gave Ezra Miller that mental health joke in The Flash, that mental health treatment joke that just seemed in really, really bad taste. Yeah, that's about as bad as Jared Leto, playing Jared Leto, tomato, let's call the whole thing off. About as on par with casting him as a cult leader, dead or otherwise. And yeah, I mean, visually, nice looking, but absolutely garbage script. Every single member of the cast seems to be in a different movie. Like, that's the thing. I mean, Tiffany Haddish, this shtick has really run its course. This shtick ran its course, I say, back in the late 2010s. This shtick ran its course 2017, 2018, and now just feels this is absolutely the same routine. This bear in mind, is the comedienne who was booed famously for that New Year's Eve gig she did a couple of years ago, and came out and said, "Oh, you win some, you lose some," and everyone else just responded with, "No, honey, they pretty much reviewed you fairly. I think that's about the standard of your work." And believe me, this film is not going to challenge that opinion at all. Yeah, just paint by numbers scripting, A to B to C to Z, and it's telegraphed way far in advance. I was bored for most of it. It ironically makes the last attempt of at this, the Haunted Mansion brand look like the first Pirates of the Caribbean. In contrast, like in terms of how accomplished that last version was, that looks like Pirates of the Caribbean in contrast. And I say that knowing full well that Disney have another one of these in the pipe because they've got Scarlett Johansson, on the conveyor belt to do Tower of Terror next. And I say that because that's why they had to settle that Black Widow lawsuit a couple of years ago, because they really wanted that Tower of Terror project off the ground. Otherwise, believe me, they weren't settling that lawsuit. And yeah, it's drivel. It lasts over 2 hours. It's about 3 minutes past the 2 hour mark. And no, just no. Come back, Eddie Murphy, all is forgiven. Honestly, I came away from this thinking I need to revisit the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie because for all the smack that gets thrown at that is light years above this. And that, even that is not quite Casper. At the top of this spectrum, you have 95 Casper. Below that, you have 2002 Scooby-Doo. And at the bottom, a festering pile of steaming, grizzled turds, you have this. And somewhere in the middle is the last attempt to make it. No. I mean, even for the kids, take the kids to see Barbie. It's a better movie, infinitely.
It's interesting how Owen Wilson isn't the lead. I mean, does he add to it? Could it have been somebody else? Why pay a Hollywood actor of his caliber, wow, all that money when anyone else could have played it?
Because they've paid a lot of actors that. Now, if you watch the trailer for this movie, you'll notice the cast list for this is quite long. It's quite staggering. It includes people like, I'm going to single one out. It includes my boy Hassan. It includes Hassan Minaj amongst its number. Now, Hassan Minaj literally has one scene. And I think he has maybe 3 lines of dialogue in that scene. But he's in the trailer. He's credited in the trailer amongst a bevy of names. It includes people like Jamie Lee Curtis, who's literally a head in a crystal ball. Maybe he has 6 lines of dialogue and 2 scenes. But that's the kind of film we're dealing with. And you start thinking, so what you have tried to do is you've tried to template Pirates of the Caribbean here, but stack it with an all-star cast in the hopes that people just won't notice that what you're peddling is garbage. But it's garbage. And I'm sorry, you can't quite waft away that very obvious whiff of garbage. And it's prevalent throughout. You just can't get past it. I say, visually, it looks nice. Great cinematography and all, because they're going for that. In fact, not even cinematography is okay. It's a production design, which is very much rooted in the 95 Casper. But nothing else about this is getting shouted home about.
Well, if you want to watch it, it is in cinemas from today. Haunted Mansion. Well, there you go. We're going to move on in just a second. We're going to talk about Billion Dollar Heist, which I've got my fingers crossed it's going to be a really good movie because I really want to see it. But we will see what Van thinks in just a second. Stay where you are. All right, welcome back. One last ride for you. One last brand new movie to talk about. I'm really looking forward to hearing what Van thought of this one. Billion Dollar Heist. Talk to me, Van.
I promise I'm going to be on more upbeat with this one. Honestly.
Good.
Right. I mean, I'm not even going to bury the lead. This is the film of the week that we're covering anyway. So, new documentary from Daniel Gordon, who most recently, I think, gave us the Australian football documentary, The Australian Dream. Okay, this is... Do you know the story of the Bangladeshi bank heist of 2016?
Very roughly, and that was from researching this, but not hugely.
Right. I vaguely knew about it because of the tech side of this, because it's kind of a perfect case study of how to perfect the cyber heist. Like, the things that went wrong were all sort of human error, really. It was dumb luck that this did not turn out worse than it did. So, this is the story of an attempted billion-dollar heist, the greatest, highest cyber heist in history. This would have been the most infamous heist since the Great Train Robbery. So, the way this works is in 2016, the Bangladeshi Central Bank found itself swindled out of just shy of $1 billion. What happened was a group of hackers spent a year cultivating this heist. First, they infiltrated the staff. They sent an email to, I think it was something like 36 staff members, 36 staff members. just from like a random person, like a dummy person, submitting a CV. And 3 of them opened the CV. And that CV was a Trojan. So this is the classic email scam. This Trojan is the first step that allowed them access the bank. That's the social engineer does that bit. And then you've got the grift, the digger, as they're called, becomes the next person in the chain who uses that access to mine through these people's computers, to mine into their social accounts, their passwords, etc., to basically burrow their way into the bank's security systems. And this is where it gets interesting. So, the reason they did all this is because the Bangladeshi central bank is linked to the New York Federal Reserve. Right, probably best known to you and me as the thing that Jeremy Irons robbed in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yeah, I know.
Only they're not running dump trucks full of gold out of the Federal Reserve. They're running digital currency. And the movie goes into extreme depths on this. So, what happens is they very cleverly chose a four-day period in 2016, very early 2016, in which, starting on a Thursday evening, because the working week in Bangladesh runs from, I think it's Sunday to Thursday. That's the working week. So it's Friday and Saturday on the weekend. They staged it this way because they knew that they could do whatever they wanted on Friday in Bangladesh, and the bank would be closed. And then by the time it got reported back to the US, they would be closed because it would be Saturday. And by the time it got to China, where they would be funneling it through, it would be Sunday. And it was Chinese New Year, so they were closed as Sunday and Monday as well. And it was a genius heist. And the only reason, and I say, they launched through the SWIFT system. They rigged the printer so the printer wouldn't print out the hard copy, so the bank couldn't see this. They thought there was just a printer error. So this is all going without notice. And they come in on Sunday morning, for instance, and the printer hasn't spat out the receipts for this. So an entire day or so goes by before they realize what's happened. They submit using this SWIFT system. I think it was 36. This was 36. It was 36 bank transfer orders, and these were in the millions. These are like 20 million, 30 million, 50 million a time. And they submit 36 of them. One gets flagged immediately by the automated system because it had a spelling error in it. They misspelt the word foundation, and the automated algorithm picked that up. They wrote foundation. Automated system found that out, flagged it up as fraud, and denied it. And then an actual manual person at the SWIFT office caught, I think it was another 32 or 33, that seemed a bit odd, and they flagged them because the bank they had tried to transfer them in happened to share half of its name with another outlet that had been flagged for dealing with Iran, had been flagged for sanctions for dealing with Iran. Jupiter Seaways, I think it was called. But they still allowed 3 or 4 of these transactions to go through. So they still allowed $81 million out of the New York Federal Reserve in the name of the Bangladeshi Central Bank. This is the story of how they pulled that off, what was involved in this scam, the lengths they went to, but also, more importantly, how bad it could have been, and also what came after the heist itself. Because I'm going to tell you a bit of it, but I'm not even going to scratch the surface. So have a listen.
Bangladesh was the biggest cyber heist of all time.
It is a mistake to think this happened overnight.
Members of the Bangladeshi bank were targeted.
They tricked them to click on an attachment that contained malicious code. They were inside the bank's network for a full year.
Copying screenshots, keystrokes of employees.
Jumping from a computer to computer.
Bingo. They find the terminal that communicates with the Fed.
They had no idea for a very long time what was happening.
It's too late. The money's gone.
I am absolutely captivated with this story. Just you talking then and explaining how it kind of pans out. I didn't move. I was just literally stuck at looking at your face, listening to what you were saying. This is one of those movies I know that if I watched, I would get to almost the end and I would still have a bowl full of popcorn.
Yeah, you probably would, to be fair, because I did. Incidentally, staring at my face, apologies, I forgot to pre-warn you I'd shaved this week. I'm going through a break. It's a whole thing. Right, so this is absolutely captivating. And believe me, the story goes in even more bonkers directions. For instance, the indexing Niger that they used in the coding turned up a few years later, I think 2 years later, in, of all things, the Sony hack. Do you remember that hack when what we thought was North Korea hacked Sony, and it was all to do with the interview, the Seth Rogen movie, The Interview, and all the Sony emails got that code. It's the same code. It's the same coding signature that turns up in this. So they traced, when the Sony hack happened, they traced it back to this, and then it turns up again in other famous incidents down the line. So the story goes in incredibly weird directions that you can't quite see coming. Fascinating stuff. If you've ever, if you remain sort of unafraid of the genuine danger of cybercrime, this film, this is the nail in the coffin for you. This is your wake up call. We get told at the beginning of the movie, look, there's certain things that threaten the human race. There's we have the pandemic, there's climate change, there's there's nuclear war, and there's cybercrime. You need to understand those are the four things that can destroy the human race. We need to take them seriously, and this is the one that no one takes that seriously. Watch this movie, and first thing, you're going to change all your passwords as soon as you watched it. That's a given.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, that's what this movie is going to do, apart from entertain, of course, and tell a true story. But it is going to remind you of the real dangers that are in the world right now, as far as getting hacked and how easy it is to steal anything from anyone if it's all done online.
But it's the domino effect as well. It's a really captivating insight into how the negligence of just one random person can take on the next, and take out the next person. They can lead them to the next person, the person after that, until eventually they get to a big mega corporation, a bank, or Sony or something like that. And it's fascinating seeing how one person clicking the wrong email attachment can lead to that. How it leads to A leads to B leads to C leads to Z, and Z is a juggernaut. It's absolutely captivating stuff. It's as I say, it's directed by Daniel Gordon. He does a very good job, because at first I was like, this doesn't seem that high end, but actually it really got me. It's only 84 minutes long. When you get the chance to see it, absolutely do, because I do think this is a wake. It's not like Blackfish level, captivating in terms of this is going to fundamentally, move you or anything like that. It's not an emotional documentary, but this is a wake-up call of a documentary. It's absolutely one I think everyone should see. So 84 minutes. This will get some time on, I think, like Storyville on BBC or something like that. And if you get a chance to see it, like I say, do. So it's called $1 Billion Heist, which I know sounds like a direct-to-DVD thriller starring Joel Kinnaman, but it really isn't.
It sounds like the next installment from Ocean's 12, doesn't it? Ocean's 13.
That comes up, actually, because they talk about the different team members that you need to pull off a heist like this, and someone actually does say you have to assemble like an Ocean's 11 type team, where you need the social engineer and the digger and so on and so forth. And it's fascinating. Honestly, this could have been so much worse. There's a lot of dumb luck, and there is a different timeline in which this becomes, a catastrophic event. I mean, they do say, like, if you fleece $1 billion out of a country like Bangladesh, that's like world ending. In that economy, that is world ending. And this could have been, because remember, we are talking about the country's central bank. Imagine the Bank of England losing something like 80% of its worth.
Wow.
That this could have been. And it's an absolutely riveting story. Honestly, I thought this was great.
Captivating. It is top of my list right now, and like you say, it's not very long. It's not one of those movies you're going to be sat there waiting for it to finish. Like, you're in and you're out, and you've had a good time. Well, if you want to watch it, $1 Billion Heist is in cinemas from today. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the movies we're going to be talking about next week. So, Lie With Me. I've not heard about this one.
Yeah, Lie With Me is the new Peccadillo movie next week. I'm looking forward to that, because they always deliver a solid, riveting drama. We've also got the animated Sparkle, A Unicorn Tale, which I'm not expecting much from, if I'm honest. It's not even about a unicorn's actual tale. It's about a unicorn story. So, we're teasing on that one. Curzon's new one, Idiots, is next week, and it's Curzon, so, decent odds of it being a half-decent time. DC have a new movie out next week. Yay! Blue Beetle is upon us because it's only been 5 minutes since The Flash. And, well, this can't be as bad as The Flash, can it?
Do they ever stop making movies? I mean, just do they have a rest?
Will they ever learn? You mean, will they ever take the hint? No, they bloody won't. It seems because I think after this is Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. So Aquaman 2 is the one after this one, and then we finally get the good stuff when James Gunn starts making them. So yeah,
I'd like for you to be surprised next week. I would like for us to be chatting this time next week, and you say, "Do you know what? Actually, I'll eat my words."
I think Sharon Stone's in this one. Is Sharon Stone? I think Sharon Stone's in this one.
Well, let's hope she wears some underwear.
Let's hope. I mean, I'll be honest. It would make a DC movie for me if it was Sharon Stone sans underwear. Like that's what I mean. The Flash was missing that. That would have changed the entire meaning of the title, The Flash, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Yeah,
it absolutely would.
Last but by no means least, I don't know if you know about this movie. Next week sees the release, and this was delayed from June. Just because August is a terrible month to release movies, and they thought, we could probably make some bank in August. Next week is the release of the new Will Ferrell comedy, Strays. Are you aware of this film? Yeah, I can tell.
I'm there for this. Yeah. I love Will Ferrell.
Yeah, this is the R-rated talking dog movie with Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx. I am dying to see this. I can't wait. I'm going to see this on Tuesday evening. I'm really looking forward to it. So Strays. Oof, watch me. I'm going to be excited all weekend now for this.
I can't wait to hear what you think of that. I'm a massive Will Ferrell fan. He's brilliant. So we will see. That's all we've got time for this week, sadly. But we will be back next week. Until then, I am Adam Ball.
I've been Dan Connor, and we shall return.